leave behind a lot of rock, a lot of sediment, but most importantly of all, a big volcanic plug, right? You've seen the volcanic plug. That's what the castle sits on top of today. That incredibly hard type of rock that the castle sits on is known as basalt rock. An incredibly hard type of rock that was so hard that during the Ice Age, 2 million years ago to 15,000 years ago, glacial erosion in this land. One glacier moving in slowly from the west, eroding everything in its path until it reaches that rock. That rock's too hard, so it breaks into two. And when it breaks into two, it forms these two deep valleys down either side of what would later become Edinburgh's old town. I mean, look how high up we are right now, okay? Being so high up in the land was very important. This left behind what's known as a geological feature which is known as a crag and tail formation. The castle sits on the crag with its cliffs on three sides, and the tail is what Edinburgh's old town sits on all the way down to the Palace of Holyrood House. Also left behind the strategic point in the land. It would of course make sense that people wanted to settle here, and we have evidence of settling here dating back to around about 900 BC. A tribe down here which were known as the Gododin tribe, a tribe which would remain here right through the 1st century. And we know they were here in the 1st century. Why? Because they had interactions with the Romans. The Romans actually wrote about this tribe here, which was unlike the Romans. They generally just wrote about themselves. They didn't write about other people, but they mentioned the tribe here. But there's no evidence in this area to ever suggest that they went to battle or they went to war against each other. There's a lot more evidence to suggest there was friendship and perhaps even trade between these two tribes. But the Romans didn't spend too long here in Edinburgh. No, they eventually retreated south, didn't they? And they built themselves a wall. Do we know this wall? Oh, keep it to yourself. Don't tell me. It's called Hadrian's Wall, right? Hadrian's Wall they would build. They built Hadrian's Wall and they described that wall in such a way that I believe the people of Scotland never got over it. They described that wall as being the end of the civilized world. Oh. Which is pretty cheeky if you ask me, right? I don't know what they found when they came to Scotland. Probably eating our deep fried Mars bars, drinking some iron brew, and they had a look at us and thought, oh, yeah, maybe we'll just leave these guys to it. They built Hadrian's Wall to keep us out of their civilized world. Fair enough. The Gododin remain here right through until the 7th century, where in the 7th century they determined their greatest threat comes from a tribe known as the Angles. They said this group of English will be a problem for us. We must ward them off in battle. But before they went to battle, they would feast here. A big meal was eaten and lots of alcohol was consumed, and they woke up the next morning incredibly hungover, incredibly bloated. They looked to each other and said, maybe we should do this tomorrow. They said that's a great idea. That night though, they say they'll take it easy. Maybe they'll have a small meal, one drink, but you know what it's like, right? The leftovers are sometimes better than the original meal. And then once you get that little taste of alcohol, you can't help yourself. Another massive feast, another load of alcohol, another big hangover the next day. And this continues for an entire year. An entire year of partying here at Edinburgh Castle before they went to battle. And I'm sure you can imagine, if Usain Bolt sat in McDonald's for a whole year before the Olympics, he's not going to win anything, and the Gododin were not going to win anything either. They were defeated by the Angles. The surviving Gododin who remained here were forced down to a part of the country today known as Wales. Wales? Nope, nobody? Excellent. The ultimate punishment, right? Send them to Wales. And that's where they ended up. In the 7th century, a very important Welsh poem was written. It's called E Gododin, or the Gododin. And this poem talks about this tribe's incredible feats in battle. But most importantly of all, it gives us the first written evidence of there being a castle here. They refer to something in that poem as the Dún Eden, or the hill fort of Eden. And once our language was anglicised, that name changed from Dunedin to the name we have today, Edinburgh, or Edinburgh, as the locals call it. That's how important this site behind us is. Our city is literally named after the castle itself. So let's get ourselves a little bit closer to the castle. Let's discuss what it is we're seeing here before making our way inside. Okay folks, so further up the escalator, let's have a little look at the size of this place first of all. It still used as a parade ground to this very day. Since 1950, every single year in the month of August, except for last year and this year, we have hosted something here called the Edinburgh Royal Military Tattoo, a collection of the world's militaries who gather here in the month of August and they perform before the paying crowds right here. We need to cram in 8,800 people every single night, and to do that, we build a stadium here, a big U-shaped stadium which runs right down here across the bottom and right back up here as well. It's quite an impressive feat of engineering. Is this stadium only stands for 6 months of the year.